who we are and who we represent. So if we can make a deal with everyone here, if you can keep your intro to 10 seconds or less. So just like the very basic facts, like your name, who you're here representing, which hat you're wearing. Most of us have multiple roles, but if we can keep it to 10 seconds, I think we should go for it. So everyone give me thumbs up if you're in agreement. 10 seconds on your intro. Okay, and we'll do it popcorn style. And so I'll start, and I'm gonna call someone's name, and whenever you're done with yours, call the next person's name, and then we'll have a check-in midway to see who hasn't gone yet. Okay, that was a lot of rules. Sorry. My name is Amanda Kenzie. I'm the Community Science Director of Mountain Studies Institute, and I co-coordinate this group with Mandy Eskelson. And I will popcorn to Allison.
Okay, Allison Lehman, Planner 1 at La Plata County. Don't laugh at me, Shauna. And Shauna and I will be presenting today. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks.
Well, I'll go since maybe that was a modified popcorn. So I'm Shauna LaGarza. I'm the Director of Emergency Management for La Plata County. And I'll hand it to, how about Paulette Church?
I'm Paulette Church. I'm representing Falls Creek Ranch. I'm their Fairways Ambassador and a board member for Wildfire Adaptive Partnership. And I popcorn to Clyde.
Clyde Church, County Commissioner, La Plata County, that is.
And we'll popcorn to Maddie.
Hi, I'm Maddie Roberts. I'm representing Mountain Studies Institute. I am a GIS intern, and I'm doing the maps and GIS story maps for the second edition of our Animas. I'll popcorn Marcel.
Hey folks, I'm Marcel Gazenbeid. I'm the Animas Riverkeeper with San Juan Citizens Alliance. And I'm also on the steering committee for the River Community Forum, work with the Bonita Peak Community Advisory Group, and I'm on the steering committee for the San Juan Watershed Group out of Farmington. So kind of across the watershed.
Popcorn.
Right, sorry, we were popcorning. I'm so sorry. Devin,
hey, my name's
over to you.
My name's Justin. I'm the manager at the Santa Rita Water Reclamation Facility. First meeting on here, just popping in to see what's going on and how I can help. I'll popcorn over to Jared.
I'm Jared Biggs. I'm the Assistant Utilities Director for the City of Durango. And I will steal Marcel's back because I think he said Devin.
Hi, I'm Devin. I am representing Representative Boebert here in Durango. And I will kick it over to, has Stacy gone yet?
Nope. Hi, I'm Stacy Bowe. I'm with Strategic by Nature. I'm a facilitator here in Durango, and I'm supporting Carrie on the Basin Implementation Plan update, and I will popcorn it to you, Carrie.
Great, thanks, Stacy. Hi, my name is Carrie Paget. I work at Harris Water Engineering, and I'm part of the local expert team doing the BIP update for the Southwest Basin Roundtable. And I will pick Russ Anderson.
Thanks, Gary. Russ Anderson. I am an engineer with Michael Baker Engineering. I'm just active in the watershed and also a member of the CAG. And I would bounce it over to Gigi.
Hi, I'm Gigi Richard. I'm with the Four Corners Water Center at Fort Lewis College. And I'll bounce it over to Warren.
Warren Ryder. I'm the coordinator for the Animas Watershed Partnership, and in that role, part of the ARC Forum as well. So I'll send it over to Lewis Meyer.
Hello, I'm Lewis Meyer. I'm a recovering engineer with SGM and was the acting engineer for the town of Silverton. And currently I'm a farmer rancher in Montezuma County. And I will pass the baton off to Paul.
Hi, I am Paul Montoya. I work for the city of Farmington, New Mexico. And I am a water resource specialist, hydrologist by training. And I got in late on the conversation, so I'm a little bit lost on who to pass it on to.
Let's pass it on to Ben Martinez.
Okay, Ben, I'm passing it on to you.
All right, thanks. Ben Martinez, San Juan National Forest, and I am the Forest Service representative to the Bonita Peak Mining District Superfund site. And I'll pass it to somebody I don't know that I've met, Helen.
Hi, everybody. I'm the Southwest Regional Representative for Senator Hickenlooper. Really happy to see you all. Thanks for the invitation. I will bounce it over to Heather. I don't think you've got yet.
Hi, I'm Heather Otter, and I work with Region 9 Economic Development, and we serve the 5 counties in Southwest Colorado and our 2 Native American tribes, Ute Mountain Ute and Southern Ute. I'm a project manager, work on all things community and economic development in the Southwest. Thanks.
Let's pass it off to Rachel Vaughn.
Hi, I'm Rachel Vaughn. I'm a senior water quality specialist with the Southern Ute Indian Tribe. And I'll pass it, I don't think Melissa's gone yet.
Hey everyone, I'm Melissa May. I'm the district manager for San Juan Soil and Water Conservation District in Aztec, New Mexico, and also on the steering committees for Animas Watershed Partnership and the San Juan Watershed Group and the CAG. So lots of fun meetings. And Mandy, you can pick someone else that was also late. I don't know who didn't go yet.
Let's pass it off to John Whitney.
John Whitney from Senator Michael Bennett's office, Basin, Durango, Western Slope Regional Director for the Senator. And I too was late, but I'll gamble and see if Marcel is gone yet.
I have gone, but thank you, John. But I will pick somebody else. I will pick who hasn't gone yet. Mandy, if you haven't gone. I don't think you've gone.
Sure. Mandy Eskelson, Mountain Studies Institute. I'm a research associate there for our water program, and I help Amanda coordinate the ARC forum. I'm going to pass it off to Tom McNamara.
Hi, I'm Tom McNamara with Colorado Emergency Management, covering the Southwest area. La Plata, Archuleta, Montezuma, Dolores, San Juan, and San Miguel, and the 2 tribes. And I can't see the list because I'm in a car in a windstorm out in Dolores, so someone else have to pick a name.
No problem. How about Matt Salka?
Hello, everyone. I'm County Commissioner for La Plata County. I look forward to this meeting, and I'll pass it off to Daniel Murray. I believe you haven't said anything yet.
Thank you, Matt. Daniel Murray, La Plata County Planning. I am here to support Allison and Shauna, and I'll defer to who is next.
Thanks, Danielle. I'll send it over to Ellen Roberts.
Yeah, thanks. Good afternoon, Ellen Roberts. I'm a member of the Southwest Basin Roundtable and also on the executive committee for the ARC Forum. Thanks. Oh, and I don't know who is left. Sorry.
No problem. I'm just going to start calling on people. Thanks, Ellen. How about Anthony Culpepper?
All right, thanks, Mandy. Anthony Culpepper with Mountain Studies Forest Program, and I'm here representing the Four Rivers Resilient Forest Collaborative, so the Forest Health Collaborative focused on La Plata County.
Thanks, Anthony. How about Eric Kirkmer?
Hey everyone, my name is Eric Kirkmer. I'm a hydrologist with the San Juan National Forest based out of Durango. I work across all 3 districts, and I've been involved with this group for a little bit now. And I have no idea who's left.
No worries. Thanks, Eric. How about Marcy from Mountain?
Hi, everyone. I am Marcy Bidwell of Mountain Studies Institute. I've been one of the original members forming the ARC Forum years and years and years back. And I'm going to try and pass it to Scott Roberts.
Hey everybody, my name is Scott Roberts. I'm an aquatic ecologist with the Mountain Studies Institute. Look forward to the conversations today. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. How about Lauren Butner?
Hi, I'm Lauren Butner. I'm a recovery coordinator with the State of Colorado's Office of Emergency Management.
Thanks, Lauren. And got someone, H. Grigg. Can't see your full name.
My name is Hudson Grigg. I'm a construction manager with Plummer Associates. We're a engineer consulting firm in Durango. And I saw this link through a Fort Lewis email. So this is my first meeting with you all.
Perfect. Welcome. John Ott, have we missed you somehow?
Yes, thank you. So I'm John Ott. I live at the James Ranch. I'm a commissioner with Water Quality Control Commission. I'm on the Basin Roundtable as well, and member of the Citizens Advisory Group for the Superfund site in Silverton. And I think that's about it, right?
Thanks, John. That's a lot. And Shara, thanks for joining us. We're just saying your name and who you're with and why you're attending this ARC Forum meeting today.
Hi, I'm Shara Ragland, and I'm with Currency Environmental in Durango. I'm also on the CAG, the Community Advisory Group, and I'm also working on the second edition and worked on the first edition of the Our Animas booklet.
Thanks so much, Shara. Amanda, I'm going to pass it off to you.
I think you missed Steve Anders.
Okay.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, Steve Anders with the U.S. Geological Survey. I manage the stream gauge network and the water quality monitoring network for the USGS on the West Slope. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. Sorry I missed you. Gigi, thanks. Good catch. Amanda.
Is there anyone else that hasn't introduced themselves yet? I'd love to invite you to speak up. Thank you so much, everyone. I think we did it. We got through everyone in a reasonable amount of time. I am going to share my screen briefly just to review our agenda for the day. One moment while I pull this up. You always think you have it ready to go, and then it's not there where you think it is. Here we go. All right, hopefully everyone can see. So we've made it through our welcome and introductions. To further introduce this meeting today, I'd just like to let you know that we did have a steering committee meeting in February with the members of our steering committee to outline our agenda for the entire year. And what floated to the surface for us was that we all wanted to talk about drought contingency planning, and what's going on kind of basin-wide, and we want to know, what does our water supply look like moving forward? Very related to drought is fire, and so fire preparedness is also a big part of that. I hope that some of you have been checking out MSI's Forest and Fire Learning Series, because it's been really fantastic. It's every Thursday during the month of April on Facebook. So please check that out if you haven't already. So moving into today's agenda, we wanted to kind of start at a higher level and move to the more local topics. And without any further delay, I'm going to introduce Carrie Paget from Harris Water Engineering. And it sounds like Stacy might be a part of that presentation as well, to talk about the Basin Implementation Plan and what they've been working on for the technical update. So I will stop sharing my screen, and Carrie, you are free to share yours.
All right, I have it up, hopefully, right? Great. Thank you guys so much for inviting me to present on the Basin Implementation Plan update. This is my first kind of take of going through it by sub-basin, so please raise your hands or ask any questions in the chat while I'm presenting. So today I had hoped, of course, I don't have the right screen growing. All right. So today I was just going to cover what kind of is the Basin Implementation Plan update for folks that aren't familiar, and then the technical results that we have that we're presenting, and those specific to the Animas that we currently have, and then some opportunities for you guys if you want to participate in the update process and engage. So first, I'm going to go through what the 2021 Basin Implementation Plan update is, and we call it the BIP. very lovingly as that. And so for folks that don't know, the statewide water supply planning has been occurring for a long time, organized by the Colorado Water Conservation Board. And so it started with SWASI, which is the statewide water supply initiative in 2004. And then SWASI was periodically updated until in 2015, the governor had issued an order for there to be a Colorado water plan. And so to build that foundation for the water plan, using those technical results from SWASI in 2010, the Basin implementation plans were created. And then those became that foundation that went into the Colorado water plan. And then after the water plan, with some new knowledge about modeling and technical information, we've kind of morphed from SWASI into what is called the analysis and technical update, or just the technical update for short. And then those that data is what I'm going to present today, that technical information. And that's really what's updating the BIP. And then again, the BIPs will be updated currently right now, and then that'll go into the water plans update that's also occurring later this year. And the key way to kind of look at it for all these planning documents and strategies is really, you look at the demands, we look at what the water supply is, and then there's these gaps, either current gaps or planning gaps in 2050. And then as members of the roundtable and public, we try to propose solutions to kind of meet those gaps. So the roundtable, as a lot of you guys are participants, so I really appreciate you guys being on the call. They've worked really diligently. There's a subcommittee on the roundtable, as well as the roundtable that's really focused on the BIP update. And they've worked diligently on refining our goals. And so our goals have been updated since 2015. And I think the biggest change since then is we've added a new goal that's called Promote Healthy Watersheds. And so that's really where I think the ARC Forum fits in, and quite a few of the other interests of this group. And so that's the goals, these are the big arching themes. And then for each goal, we have strategies under those of how the roundtable sees implementing those goals and supporting them. And then further down in that strategic plan, we also have measurable objectives that help us reach those goals. And those objectives range from reaching, looking at gaps in 2050 or near-term gaps, and then as well as education and outreach goals and actions. So that's kind of the BIP in a nutshell. There's a lot more pieces, but that's just a quick overview. So to get to the data, which I think is the more exciting part, so the analysis and the technical update results. So as I kind of mentioned, the technical update is the new SWASI, and it really focused on updating and upgrading the water supply and demand projections using CDSS. And then it provided, a more consistent framework and data modeling for all the basins. And then it created some additional tools that we could hopefully be using to help identify and understand our gaps and solutions. I think another big change is SWASI was just a 2050 planning horizon and had a low, medium, and high range, whereas the technical update uses the 5 planning scenarios from the Colorado Water Plan. And these are the 5 planning scenarios. And I'm sorry if it's a little blurry on the graphic. Hopefully the little caricatures still come together okay. But these were developed with the roundtables as well as the Interbasin Compact Committee, which are roundtable representatives. That's a group in addition to the roundtables. And these were they were done as a sticker exercise to really narrow down, there's a plethora of planning scenarios we can look at, and this really narrowed down the 5 scenarios that everyone could support and wanted to investigate. And I think the real challenge here is that we're trying to turn these narratives of these planning scenarios into numbers. And so as you guys can see, scenario A is really just called business as usual. So it's pretty similar to status quo of what's happening now. So really the trends for population and economic growth are similar. Same for the climate conditions, as well as there's not very much, low energy water needs. So not a lot of Mancus shale occurring. There's slightly higher ag use, just kind of naturally as time goes on. And same for, efficiencies for municipal, industrial, and ag users, just that naturally occurring. And then it also kind of has no changes in our values that are related to social and environmental needs, as well as regulatory constraints. And so that's kind of A is just business as usual. B, scenario B, is focused on a weak economy. So it's very similar to A, but the population is just growing a little less. And so that means your M&I demand isn't quite as high, as well as your ag demand. You know, that maybe that means we're not selling as much as of our agricultural products outside of our communities, but it's more staying locally. And then our energy water needs are pretty similar as well. And that's what, when you see the little droplets or the temperature gauges, they all match really well, except for under the agricultural water needs. And then the M&I kind of decreasing. And then so scenarios C, D, and E, these are the ones that really start ratcheting up how climate change is impacting our water supply needs. And so in cooperative growth, that means we're going to see an increased population, but we're also going to see, you know, higher density urbanization. So really that model of, you know, condos and then community shared green spaces as opposed to rural development. The climate change is it's a very similar between an extreme and then kind of what's going on in A and B. So very middle of the ground. And they're also going to be just increasing as you can see, there's like 5 trees under social values. So that means people are becoming really aware of their social and environmental values, and they're actively pursuing protecting those values. And then we also have some regulatory constraints increase, kind of reflecting that we're pursuing more social and environmental values. And then one thing to note is in this scenario, the municipal and industrial demands are the second lowest out of all the 5. And then moving on to D is a hybrid, I would say, between C and E. So it's using that increased climate change, but it's saying because we know climate change is coming, we're going to drastically implement efficiency measures for municipal, industrial, and agricultural users. So instead of just naturally becoming more efficient, we're setting a goal of being more efficient in that ag sector. And then the regulatory constraints kind of associated with projects, they're increased, but also expedited. So kind of a hybrid of that. And then this one also has, because we're growing more quickly, higher M&I demands. It's the second highest. And then scenario E, the hot growth is kind of just the end of the world. It's extremes across the board. So we have, you know, really high population growth. We have low density for urban areas. So none of that clustering, it's really spread out. We have very hot and dry climates. We have high energy water needs, ag demands are higher, M&I demands are higher. And then the social and environmental values, we actually kind of are less willing to work on those. So that kind of decreases in that area. And I think from what I've been able to glean from this, and it's really would be interested to hear anyone else's thoughts, is that really the big thing that's going to affect our area is climate change. You can tell that, and we know that because, you know, it's in the first 2 scenarios, the climate isn't really changing. And then in the next one, it's increasing the temperature, which is causing, you know, an increase in precipitation. But then the other ones, the temperature is increasing even more, and then it decreases the precipitation. So I think in our area, if anyone studies some of the models, especially those weather models, we live in a beautiful place, but it's a weird band to model, being near the mountains and the desert. And so unlike the rest of the state, I think climate change could be the most significantly impacted in Southwest Colorado. So I think that's a big driver for a lot of these technical update results, because if you change the temperature, you're going to change, you know, your runoff timing, the grow season. And then different people might be moving to the area for different reasons, because we're losing snowpack or we're, you know, gaining more shoulder season months. So I think out of all those scenario plans, really the climate change is a big model driver and how that changes. So taking all this that I talked about, the 5 scenarios, I'm going to move into our results. So from our results, this is Southwest Basin, the Colorado's for our basin. For people that aren't familiar, the Southwest Basin Roundtable represents 9 subbasins from the San Juan all the way over to the San Miguel. And so this is a accumulation of their results. And as you guys can see, the green bars is that agricultural demand. The little orange bars on top of that is our M&I demand. And then the blue bar is the total gap. And then the black bar is the incremental gap. And the difference between those 2 gaps is really how they like the gap that agriculture kind of lives with currently, and then the gap that they're going to get in addition to when faced with climate change and population growth. And then I broke this table down into the Animas River, and I have a lot of slides. I know I'm running out of time already, but I will share these with everybody, and feel free. I have plenty of notes as well on the slides, so feel free to reach out after you read them. But this, I think, really captures how the Animas basin's being affected. So similar to the whole basin, but it shows that really the scenario C and E, where that climate change of hot and dry weather is really the driver. And you know, our M&I gaps are relatively small, but it's, if you can see that incremental gap, I mean, 27,000 acre feet for ag, that's a pretty big demand that we're going to have a gap by 2050. And then in that worst case scenario of 38,000 acre feet, that's very large. And then this is just moving along quickly, but this is a similar, same data, but just another way to present it that just shows that gap. And really the big change here is that incremental gap and then the baseline gap. So the baseline gap is the gap that ag users live with year in, year out, because Mother Nature doesn't give them a full supply every year anyways. So we're really, you know, that's the gap we're always trying to address. And then this incremental gap on top of that is a concern. And then just to quickly move forward, I think I talked a lot about ag and M&I. That's very easy to model with those demands. So for environment and rec, they've created these databases and tools to hopefully look at trying to quantify that more. And I think the more projects and more groups like this that we can get more information about environmental and recreational needs will be very helpful. And so I'm going to skip ahead to what we kind of currently have to use. Is this is called the environmental and recreational flow tool. And so what they've done is taken stream gauges across our subbasin, and you can pick it in this model, and you can run those scenario planning at that stream gauge and see how that stream gauge is affected based on those 5 scenarios. And I think I have those slides, so this might just be a little fun homework exercise for everyone to look at. So some ran out of time. But I think everyone would kind of assume and understand that the runoff, this one's very telling that in May, you can see in the first 3 scenarios, you know, not very high runoff at the Animas River in Howardsville. And, you know, runoff was happening more in June. And right away, when we switched to those climate change impacted scenarios, runoffs occurring a month earlier. So these slides and that flow tool has many different graphics, many different statistics you can look at, different ways to kind of cut, looking at that stream gauge and understanding how the flows are being impacted by those planning scenarios. And for our basin, we have asked the flow tool to be updated. So we have nodes at the top and bottoms of every one of our rivers that we can to model, so you can kind of compare, for instance, Animas at Howardsville versus Animas at Cedar Hill, and see where those impacts are to environmental and rec needs. And I think I'm going to skip ahead just to the end for you guys to engage. I think that's really important. But here's upcoming meetings. I know everyone's been participating in Zoom meetings a lot, but this is the final stretch. So if you guys are interested in learning more about the roundtable and the BIP update process, here are upcoming final meetings on the BIP. The draft BIP is going to be available for public review this fall in October and November. And then the Colorado Water Plan is getting underway for those updates. And there's a few remaining workshops that they're kicking off if anyone's interested in attending those. And I would really recommend, if anyone's interested in following anything, you visit this website called engagecwcb.org. It has everything on the BIP update, as well as the water plan update and events and places that you can list to participate. So yeah, I know that was really quick, but this PowerPoint will be made available. So feel free, once you look through it, to reach out and ask me any questions. And yeah, with that, I'll open it up with any other questions.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Really shows the need for adaptation and cooperation if we're going to make it.
Absolutely.
Yep. Let's do 1 or 2 questions. So please, I'm going to say just speak up if you have a question. Okay, going once. Anyone? Okay, we are going to move on in the interest of staying on time. Yes, Ellen, we will send the PowerPoint to everyone on the call. Absolutely. Mandy does a great job doing sort of a table of all the notes from the meeting, and then we attach all the presentations. So thank you for that question. Shauna and Allison, I'd like to invite you to start your presentation on wildfire preparedness at the county level.
You bet. Thank you. This is Shauna. So I'll start for about 10 or 15 minutes on the first slide, actually. There you go. That's my slide. And then Allison's going to do the next slide. So, I wanted to give you all a little bit more information on Fire Outlook. And I was waiting for the national 2020 report to come out so I could put some cool data in this PowerPoint. And it just now came out. So I've been pulling it up as we've been speaking. It just came out this morning. But you all know in the Fire Outlook for 2021, you've probably seen the predictive services maps, right? The national office level puts out those maps from the Boise office at NIFC every month for the next 4 months. And so our area, I'm looking at them right now. And if people don't know where to find the predictive service monthly seasonal outlooks, and we can definitely get that link up and out to this team. But you all seem very well practiced in water and fire prevention. So I'm assuming that you know where to find that. So it's looking like this month we're pretty much showing kind of normal on the maps. Into May, we start to get into a little bit above normal, which is right down here in Southwest Colorado, which should not be shocking to anybody on this call, right? We've had some good snow this winter in the higher country, but we haven't had near enough moisture, and we've been in a drought for a period of time in this area. And so with that comes above average of fire potential. In my dog is barking outside the door right now at me, right? So a little distracting there, but without the moisture that we have, that we're above normal for fire potential. But it's been like that in our area in the West throughout the past few years, the cycles that we have off and on, right? And so we all know that when we have drought conditions, that the fuels, they don't have enough moisture to protect themselves, right? And so when you get a fire started on the landscape, then it's more susceptible to burning. So, and it shows us too in June and then in July, it's red on the map showing above normal potential for us in Southwest Colorado. So then I thought, well, I'm going to look at this 2020 report. This is the one I really wanted to be able to share some of the slides with you all. And so I started to look into, now looking at more the local fires and not just the national type situation. And so I looked into the Rocky Mountain region on this 2020 annual report that comes out of Predictive Services, which I will give you that link for you all in that, because it's a great report to read and gather some information on, fires of the past. So I started to dig into the Rocky Mountain area, and I thought, well, I wonder how the Rocky Mountain area, and I didn't get specific to Southwest, but the Rocky Mountain area, total fires for 2020. Last year we had, listen to this, lightning fires last year in the Rocky Mountain region. We had 789 lightning fires for about 230,000 acres. Okay. So hopefully you wrote that number down, because then you come down here on these charts and you come into the human caused fires in the Rocky Mountain region. For human caused fires, we were just under 2,100 human caused fires for 791,000 acres, right? Significant differences between the lightning and the human. And so one of the things I've been talking with some folks down here for Fire Outlook and fire prevention, and what we can start to continue to talk about down here is, one less spark, one less wildfire campaign. How do we continue to educate the public on caring about fire in the landscapes? And it was hard last year because a lot of the COVID and everybody flooded to the national forest. And so we had our own troubles there on the national forest, with everybody was out recreating. I see Ben shaking his head, right? And they're recreating all over the national forest. And so I think that's something that we should dig into a little bit more, and how do we help out as a community? Because if we can prevent one fire, a human caused fire, then then we're going to be better off, right? So that was interesting for me looking into our statistics for 2020. So then I thought, well, you know, last year we had some pretty big fires in Colorado, right? North of us up there, they had a lot going on. So then I thought, well, you know, I wonder what it was like here in 2002, right? You guys remember that? So in 2002, which was the Missionary Ridge fire year, it was my first year with the San Juan Hotshots. We set some records here in this 2020 summary that you guys can eventually look at. In 2002, we set records for days at preparedness level 5. Preparedness level 5 is where it's Armageddon across the country, right? There's not enough resources. There's fires everywhere. We're really, really busy. 2002 has a record for preparedness levels 4 and preparedness levels 5. And 2002 had records for type 1 team mobilizations. So then when I looked at this to learn for the future, so what did we set a record in last year? Last year we set a record in moving engines across the country, engine mobilizations, which makes sense because we had the COVID protocols and we used module of 1 to move around the country, right? So this is a great document. I'm going to get the link and get it to you all to look at. It's just very informative for us as we move forward. So I had that on my fire outlook. So yeah, it's going to be hot, windy, and dry. Look at today. Hopefully there's no new fires starting today because all that dead grass will burn out there, right? And Allison's going to talk a little bit more when we get to her slide about things we can do individually for fire prevention and stuff. So in my next little block there, Office of Emergency Management, if you can see that picture in the middle, that is actually our dispatch 911 City and La Plata County Dispatch Center. Just last Thursday, that's one of our dispatchers when we were sending out the alerted notifications to a wildfire simulation that we did with a subdivision here last week. So we're trying to do, and look, she has like 6 screens, right? It's the hardest job in the world being a dispatcher. So in the Office of Emergency Management, we're really trying to do a lot of things, prevention and mitigation, preparedness and training, and just be prepared in the OEM to help support the community, right? And so I'm still very new in this emergency management job. And so I'm learning about a lot of those things. And this forum has been great because I'm putting some faces to names and thinking how I can continue to help from the OEM side of my life now into the community, right? So that's a real-time picture of us having a full on scale simulation in Durango just last Thursday. And we learned a bunch from that simulation and we'll continue to get better and help out into the future. My last slide here is just interagency, obviously. And my little barking chow chow just entered the house. So be prepared. He could show up on screen, right? So, which he does on all these 3 o'clock Zoom calls, but interagency. So we can't do it alone. And it's pretty nice here in San Juan and La Plata County that we have awesome relationships with the National Forest, the BLM, the Park Service, the tribe, and all the city fire departments. We have our operating plan that we review together with the state and all those folks I just mentioned to be prepared and to help share our resources throughout the county, right? And some things that we're trying to do in the Office of Emergency Management is bring in we have a small incident management team, local team of operations, plans, finance, and logistics to help support you all out there when we could get some fire activity through the EOC. Now, of course, in the interagency world, there's a ton of resources in the Forest Service air tankers and the BLM, the single engine air tankers. You got your type 1 helicopters like the Sky Crane you see there, and a great amount of hand resources and crews and wildland fire crews across the country. So we should be very, very proud in the United States that we have the most significant interagency resource mobilization program in the world. And we do a great job of how that's all managed coming down to us, and proud of the people that we have in the local county for that. So those are my slides. I hand it over to my buddy Planner One, Allison. All you.
Thanks, Shauna. And for those of you who, like Shauna mentioned, you're just meeting her, although I'm meeting a lot of you today as well. Shauna hasn't even been here a year, and at the county and is just doing incredible stuff. That simulation was a really great exercise in preparedness, and that connection between the planner side of things and then the Office of Emergency Management and doing these preparedness activities is a really great way for this county to kind of look ahead and see what we can do differently, and anticipation of, as Carrie was depicting, and why most of you are here participating today, because we know that drought is occurring right now. It probably won't go away, and it's in our best interest to prepare and plan ahead, both from the wildfire perspective and for water. A number of activities are occurring and occurred starting last year in the county as far as wildfire preparedness. So I'm going to explain some of those, and then we're going to try and leave time at the end. So if people have questions, please, send those into the chat, or feel free to speak up at the end. The first slide here, CPA stands for Community Planning Assistance for Wildfire. And La Plata County participated in a grant program last year. It was at no cost for the county, where a group came to, and when I say come, they were not physically here. They worked with the county from January through October of last year, when they presented their final recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners for La Plata County. The activities for the majority of that year were based around a stakeholder group, and that was comprised of organizations here today, like Mountain Studies Institute, Wildfire Adaptive Partners. We have federal partners at the table, the fire protection districts, Colorado State Forest Service, and everyone is contributing to the discussion of what are the concerns, what are the opportunities, and really giving as much information as we could to the committee who's working on the grant to help them develop 3 recommendations. That's what they presented in their final report, excuse me, to the Board of County Commissioners. And I will just summarize it really quickly for you. I will also encourage everyone, if you're interested, the report is on the Planning Department website. If you go online to La Plata County, to the Planning Department, and you can see a link for wildfire maps. And this first slide or image here on the slide is a map that was produced as part of the CPA effort. They had a very advanced GIS mapping exercise. It was part of CPA that involved a lot of different mapping tools that created everything that we presented in the report and now have advanced to GIS. So of the 3 recommendations, the first one was what the county adopt the hazard assessment maps that were part of the CPA report. And in fact, that did occur. The county commissioners voted to amend the maps or replace the existing wildfire maps into the county code and infrastructure, meaning you can go on GIS today through a link that's on the La Plata County Planning website. You can look in an address, whether you're interested in moving there or you already live there, and see the hazard rating, and you can learn about the vegetation types, the potential flame height, and other wildfire behaviors that you could anticipate at that property. So that's a really useful result of CPA. A second recommendation is that the county adopt wildland urban interface requirements. And this is something that is a lengthy consideration, a lengthy process for the county. So it's an ongoing conversation. But one thing that will help to advance that is discussions like this, where people are learning what's going on, learning about opportunities and ways to be prepared. And the third recommendation fits into that. And what that is to formally adopt a wildfire council, or what is known now as the Wildfire Advisory Board. The Wildfire, the Wildfire Advisory Board is a citizen group. The application deadline is today, in fact, and members of the community, maybe even some of you today in this meeting, have submitted applications to the Board of County Commissioners, who will be interviewing and selecting those candidates who will be sworn in May. Yes, May, so next month. So that progress, already getting these recommendations from CPAW and then beginning to take action on that is a really big deal for La Plata County. The Wildfire Advisory Board, to sum it up, there's a lot of different things that this board can work on, but to summarize it, they can formulate, make recommendations, provide guidance on mitigation planning and activities and wildfire preparedness strategies. So working directly with the county and making these recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners is going to be a great way for the county to understand what the opportunities are and make improvements. And then what I want to close with today on our living with drought and our considerations for drought in La Plata County. Very recently, the planning department added a page to the website called Living in La Plata County. And this also, if you go to the La Plata County Planning webpage, on the related pages on the left-hand side, you'll see the link. A bulk of the web page is dedicated to living in drought, or living with drought, I should say. And so that is our reality. And for many people who grew up with lush green lawns or extravagant landscapes, that's kind of expectation that people may have for what their lawn and what their landscape should look like here. Big part of what this website will hopefully accomplish is teaching the right type of landscape materials. There's this whole page is resources. So there's a link to the types of plants that are xeric, low water tolerant, will be a good fit for the type of soil conditions and drought conditions that we have, as well as temperature and other considerations in La Plata County. Some recommendations and suggestions for trees. And then another big focus that I think is really important that people may not necessarily consider is how to properly irrigate your landscape. And there are many suggestions on the webpage, including simple suggestions like drip that you might be able to use for a smaller landscape. There's even suggestions for agriculture. And for anyone who has an irrigation system, there's a link to what's called soak, or cycle and soak. And the reason that I am going to encourage everyone to look this up right now, no, I'm almost done and then you can check it out. But cycle and soak, the reason it's so important is because our soils are so intolerant to moisture that typically 3, really at most in 7 minutes, the moisture or the water it's receiving starts to run off. And so if you are using a sprinkler system or some type of irrigation, unfortunately, after a very short amount of time, you're losing that water. It begins to become runoff. And there are ways that you can test your soil. You can look at root depth and you can determine what the watering, the kind of right amount of watering is. If you don't have that scientific background, no problem. What I simply suggest is just changing the length that you're using, running your system, say start out 5 minutes, see if there's runoff in that 5 minutes, And then if so, you should cut back to 3 or 4 minutes. And the soak and cycle technique is in an hour, in a half an hour time span, however you want to spread it out, you would run your system for that 3 or 5 minutes 3 times. That's going to give your vegetation, your landscape, enough water it needs to sustain to be healthy and lush without overusing water. And that is the important concept that we're looking for here. We're looking to, you know, keep our beautiful area beautiful while we're also preparing for the future. So my request to you today, do go look that up, the soak and cycle. Check out the other resources on our webpage. Encourage friends, family, neighbors to do the same, and let's all work together, because there's a lot we can do as far as wildfire preparedness and preparing for making our landscapes more resilient. Thanks.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. We have time for questions for Shauna and from Allison, and poor Allison. Please let me know. Go ahead and just speak up if you have a question. Okay, we are actually a little bit ahead of time, which is great. So as I introduced in the beginning, we started with Carrie's presentation of kind of our whole watershed of the Animas River Basin, sub-basin. And then we moved to our county level with Allison and Shauna. We're next going to hear from some more local leaders about actual measures being taken to plan for drought. So first we'll hear from the City of Durango Utilities from Jared Biggs, and then we'll move to Silverton. So Jared, I invite you to share your screen if you'd like to, or if you're just going to speak.
I'll see what we can do. I did put together a slideshow. I'm usually not driving these things. That's my only trouble. Does everybody see the presentation?
Looks great.
Awesome. So I just wanted to go over with everybody, you know, everybody knows why we're here. We know we had, you know, not quite the best snowpack this year. We started into the year with low soil moisture. And as you can see, the cover of the City of Durango's Municipal Drought Management Plan has a couple pictures that some of us have maybe bad memories of. One of them is a lemon reservoir, where you can kind of see a lot of the bottom of it. And the other one was 416 fire. So that 2018 year really really gave us the visuals that go with our drought plan. But I wanted to start off with just some I guess interesting new stats. We just conducted a water sentiment survey within the City of Durango. And, you know, this survey, we're just trying to gauge where people are at, what their concerns are about water. You know, we ask questions like, do they use their tap water, which I'm very happy that the majority of people use their tap water, think it's safe, know their utility, right? But some of these items we asked specifically about drought. So one of them I kind of have a centerpiece here is thinking about Durango supply, which statement is closest to your view? And we had 95 of the respondents. 48% said, I'm equally concerned about quality and quantity. Another 30% are more akin to just say quantity. You know, 10% said quality, and then 10% just said, I'm not really concerned about either quality or quantity, right? So I'm heartened because that means at least you know, 89% of people are considering it and see water quality and water quantity as an issue potentially, right? 94% of respondents said they were concerned about the environmental factors that drought would have on Durango's water supply, right? And that's either very or somewhat concerned. A lot of them, we do have a great and educated community. They keep themselves involved, and they said they consider themselves knowledgeable about water conservation and water shortage. And then, 42% of people said they felt very vulnerable, and 41% said somewhat vulnerable about the possibility of water shortages affecting their land and property. So I think, we kind of conducted these surveys to get take the temperature of the community. And I think it's conveying a lot of what we know, but it's good to make sure and check in and understand what the community's trying to say. So, so we had developed a drought management plan. It was kind of a long plan in the making. So we initiated this effort all the way back in 2017, but really didn't roll it out in earnest until about 2019. We were actually having drought meetings in the middle of 2018, kind of having interesting conversations about, well, look at the weather outside. Don't we wish we would have put this together last year, right? And I hope that everybody who's putting together drought management plans, they're getting ahead of it when they can. But in the current situation, I feel like we are well equipped. So just to give you a sense of how this was developed, the first thing was kind of the assembling of a development of a drought committee, right? So that included representatives from our Parks and Rec department, our sustainability department, engineering, energy management. We actually got some representation from Fort Lewis, their operations and physical plant, who came, and we all took a couple days to talk about what drought could mean, how to prioritize things, and that's what I want to provide to you today. The first kind of a difficult exercise is defining drought. What is drought? Because it can mean different things to different people. I put this quote in here from the journal Science, where they said, although drought, we know it when we see it, right? There's no universal definition of drought. All of us think, well, there's hydrologic drought. We know there's not enough water in our environment today. But our specific scenario in the city of Durango, we wanted to make sure we also included the inability to deliver water. That even on a day where we were in flood conditions, our inability to deliver water would trigger our drought response protocols. And that's because we do have aged infrastructure, and we want to make sure we're prepared to communicate with people if our deliveries can't take place, right? Our objectives of this plan were under kind of 4 headings. The ability to plan and prepare for drought, identify and monitor drought in a better way, or a more clear way, respond, mitigate, and communicate about drought, and then continually evaluate and update the documentation and methodology, because we know as we continue through variable conditions that are going to take place because of climate change, that we will be in need of maybe amending how we measure or how we respond to any of these scenarios. And again, that is a great point to make, that our definition of drought is valuable and applies to us today. But tomorrow, those conditions might change. Those items that we look to say drought is coming. So to give everybody a sense, a lot of you may know this, but Durango has an interesting water supply scenario. We receive water from both the Florida River and the Animas. Our primary feed is from the Florida River, provided by gravity. We have Terminal Reservoir, which is up at our water treatment plant up on top of the mesa. And that holds approximately 90 million gallons. And I believe we can draw that down pretty effectively near the bottom, but we might not be able to effectively get all 90 million if we were not actively adding water to that on a daily basis. During summer, that gives us 7 to 14 days of supply. So in Durango, we really do live by the flow of the rivers in our community. Unlike many utilities, if I conserve a gallon today, we as a city have a very limited capacity to save that gallon for tomorrow. And so we get a lot of questions on a regular basis about, well, why don't you have watering restrictions? Why don't you just go ahead and put them on? And it is one where we say, if we have watering restrictions, we don't have the means to move that supply in time. We've got it or we don't in a lot of respects. So this plan, again, it is used to communicate exactly how we plan to react in cases of drought. And it really looks at the two different areas. So it looks at supply. How will, if we have limited water availability, how are we going to try to exercise our options to increase supply? And so it spells out when we may turn on or turn off pumps, when we may restrict raw water uses to ensure we can get deliveries to our treatment plant. When we will operate 1, 2, maybe even 3 pumps to augment our supply. But as all of you likely are much more aware, the demand side of drought ends up being the one a lot more people talk about. And it ends up being the one that, when there isn't wet water in that river, the demand side is where you can ask and maybe even tell in some cases how people can use water in order to limit how much you need to produce. So this plan, it spells out how the city as a leader, right? We don't want to tell everybody, hey, don't wash your car. We actually spell out in this plan, when we reach stage 2, we're going to stop washing our cars and our buses are going to be a little uglier, right? We have amended park watering schedules. We have calls for voluntary water restrictions. And then, as we escalate down a four-phase plan, we formalize outdoor water use restrictions and other priorities. So, and to those priorities, again, the group they developed these priorities. Number 1, health, life, and safety. 2 is business and indoor use. So drive the economy, keep it thriving. 3 is maintaining high priority parks, 4 medium priority parks. And then the last one, when we got plenty of water, there's no reason we can't keep low priority parks looking good, right? So the plan does spell out, again, as I said, drought stages and trigger points, right? So it spells out, we had these plans in place prior to having this formalized drought plan. But we're kind of bringing it from behind the curtain where, I used to simply go up to the water treatment plant staff and say, what are you guys doing to respond to drought? And they would tell me, our reservoir is at X. And so we're going to react this way. And we would ask you, Jared, to start asking for voluntary reductions. We've put it in the plan that way. The communication's a little bit easier. We can go out to the community and it's not a surprise what we're doing and why we're doing it. And it spells out again what our supply side efforts will be. We'll turn on pumps, we'll restrict raw water usage, and also what maybe our city and public use restrictions might look like. as we escalate these items. And altogether, I think the point of all of it, as I just mentioned, was to pull this decision-making out from behind a curtain or out from, an office either here, at my office or up at the water treatment plant, to say, this is our plan, this is what we're doing. And this slide I mentioned, our citywide newsletter is called City Currents. It has quite a water theme. We identify with the water in our community. And so communicating with people about water has become more paramount. And this drought plan is one of those items. I know I got quoted in the paper last week saying, we need to start thinking, and all of us on this webinar tend to know what's happening out there today. We need to start thinking about how we might get the same result with less water. And I think this group is thinking about that and how we can expand that across to, I suppose, more of our community, more of our region is going to be of paramount importance moving ahead. So with that, I think that is all I've got. So I will stop my share.
Thank you, Jared. Does anyone have a question for Jared? Please feel free to speak up.
This is Heather from Region 9. Thanks, Jared, for that. I have a couple questions. Going back to the survey, there were how many total respondents? Was it just under 200?
Yeah, I believe our total respondents were 197.
And do you have any idea or indication of how dispersed those respondents were across the county? Did you have any way to see that? Like, in other words, were those 200 pretty much from one neighborhood, or do you know?
So in many respects, there were approximately 70 of those respondents that did register the survey and mentioned that they lived either in or outside of Durango. And so again, our numbers of, kind of the demographics are limited. I would say it was of those 70 or so respondents, 2/3 did live within Durango, relatively dispersed around Durango. But again, we didn't require people to register to provide us those survey results. Our step one is let's get information. Step two is let's understand it, be able to dissect it a little further. I do wish we did get few more responses, but frankly, with some of the consultants we were talking about, we said, well, if we get 200, we're doing decent based on, I guess, some of the city's track record with a lot of surveys.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. And my second question has to do with what you were talking about. If we save a gallon or conserve a gallon today, we don't have I can't remember the exact words, but I was wondering if you could just explain that a little bit more. The way it landed for me is we may not have the infrastructure or to collect conserved water, or what did you mean by that? Why can't we collect it?
I would say that's accurate, Heather. We don't have a significant reservoir to collect water in the case that we could save it, right? So take, for example, Denver Water, biggest water provider in our state, right? They have a series of reservoir where they have, millions of acre feet, which is great, or maybe not millions of acre feet, but they've got quite a few acre foot in storage. If they don't use that gallon, right, in our homes, they don't have to produce that gallon. They can leave it in the reservoir. Durango, since we're using a surface supply for the most part, if I don't use it at home, when we have it, that is, it will just flow by in the river, right? We aren't keeping it in a bucket. We are We're just getting it out of the river when we need it, right? So I hope that helps to clarify, but yes, we don't have infrastructure we don't have a reservoir that we can move water in time, as they say, instead of just space.
That is really helpful. And I just have to say that hit me like a ton of bricks now that you re-explained that, because to me, this indicates a real opportunity for all of us to help with the messaging around that, because I would imagine there are some people that might hear that and say, well, then it doesn't matter. I better just use it. It's like use it or lose it, which I don't think we want to promote that idea, but that seems like a big opportunity that, because I'm trying to think about like, okay, what can I do? How can I help? And sometimes just producing some messages, to get the word out. I don't know. Do you have a thought on that? Because that seems like something we could that could land for some people just in a way that says, well, why does it even matter then? If we can't conserve it, then why should I try to conserve water or not let the water run when I brush my teeth or whatever?
Well, one, it would be kind of expensive. We do still charge for that water, so there's step one. But again, for the conservation ethos, if everybody is more used to using less, they are better prepared for when we have less. We don't have as significant an impairment of our property values if we have low water use, applications, yards, where in the year where we do pull watering restrictions because we don't have that water in the river, if you're prepared to have less, you can weather that storm a little easier. When there is water to be had, it is kind of a tough sell to say, hey, conserve, because it's still a good idea. We still have neighbors to the south who use water that will go by, right? So again, it's one of the reasons I really wanted to do the presentation today, and I appreciate Mountain Studies and Amanda inviting me, because I think talking about drought with this community, and then when we all go to the coffee shop or the bar, whenever we can go do those things, we can have those conversations, and maybe somebody will be more aware of Durango's water scenario, and be more aware of Farmington's and more aware of our regional water scenario, and understand that the conservation is still good medicine, regardless of Durango's particular scenario, right?
Thanks,
Really
Jared.
helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Marcel, can you say what you want to say in 1 minute?
Yes, yeah, super quickly. First, thank you, Jared, for your work on the plan and everything that you're doing. Really appreciate it. In your presentation, you mentioned that under kind of severe drought conditions, Durango might exercise its water rights portfolio. And I'm wondering if you could maybe mention what those water rights might be. For example, I believe Durango has water rights in Lake Nighthorse, and I'm wondering how those would play into a kind of a drought scenario.
So it's a good question, Marcel. I would say number one, it is when I say we'll exercise our water rights portfolio, the predominant one is using more of our Animas rights that exist today. But I think moving ahead, one of the things we'll be pushing is how do we get access to Lake Nighthorse so we can utilize those resources as well.
I have a quick question, Jared. I would like to go on record as saying that the city of Farmington would appreciate it if you let all that water flow by down to us.
Noted, Paul. I appreciate it. I look to be a partner when we can. So.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good point. Paul's down there lower in the watershed, but next we're going to move higher in the watershed and hear from Lewis Meyer about the town of Silverton's water supply. Lewis, you may share your screen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to the Mountain Studies Institute for having this today and looking at these issues on a watershed basis. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep, you're all good, Lewis.
Okay. Well, I'm going to talk about the town of Silverton's experience with managing water in a drought, and I'd probably add the adjectives fire, changing climate, and the new normal to that. I'm going to start though with some lessons learned. We started in 2017 on a water security planning project for Silverton. And in many ways, headwater communities can be a bellwether, canary in a coal mine scenario of what other people may experience in the future. But the four takeaways I would leave you is, first of all, the importance of contingency planning and looking at the worst case scenario, particularly for droughts, changing climates, fires, etc. It also means looking longer term, more like 40 years, whereas we used to look at these projects in more of a 20-year time frame. We can't rely upon a lot of the statistics that we used to rely upon, things like 100-year events and average wet and dry year cycles. Those statistics are changing. The second point is the importance of multiple and redundant supplies, and I'll add one more adjective, diverse supplies, and that's particularly important in a drought scenario. The third point is it's not always looking at water supply, water quantity, water quality, but the other huge companion issue is water administration, water rights, because in times of drought and changing climate, the administration changes, and the impact of that is relatively senior water right holders can be reduced to junior water right holders, and junior water right holders can be further reduced to more junior water right holders, and I'll explain that later. The last point I'll leave you with is the importance of aging infrastructure. The last thing you want to be doing when you're looking at drought issues, which typically you're in more of a reactive mode, is to also deal at the same time with aging infrastructure. So this is the lovely town of Silverton. We looked at many different alternatives for a new water supply for them, including new run-of-the-river supplies, wells, reservoirs, new water rights, the whole gamut of things. To give you a little background, up here on the right is the town's Boulder Creek supply. It's a run-of-the-river supply, which means there's no reservoirs. It's just a straight intake out of the river. And over here, a very similar watershed supply, the Bear Creek water supply, also a run-of-the-river. Prior to 2017, the town started experiencing fairly severe problems with both supplies. Some of them were infrastructure related and others were natural hazard related, and I'll explain what those are. A few challenges that water providers high in the basin have, and I'm going to use the terminology a headwater community lumped into one category, a mid-river water provider, and then a lower basin water provider. And I'm going to be talking about a headwater water supply. But you look at this map around the town of Silverton and you think, my gosh, you've got the Animas River, Mineral Creek, Cement Creek, and many other small tributaries. What's the problem? Well, interestingly, headwater communities are probably most vulnerable in the future for changing climate, droughts, fires. And as a anecdotal evidence of that, when we did the Colorado Water Plan in the Colorado Basin, there were 64 water providers that we interviewed. And the water providers that were most at risk were the headwater communities. And they were the only ones that had limited water supplies. They had planned on tap moratoriums and even land use growth limits on future growth. A few other issues. Silverton's been dealing with avalanches in their 2 watersheds. Fire issues, the 416 fire and the ice fire last year both impacted Silverton. Regulatory requirements are very difficult in headwater communities because most of the area upstream is public lands, U.S. Forest Service or BLM lands. You can't do anything on channel anymore. Very difficult to find reservoir sites. Clearly in Silverton, there's a legacy of mining that has caused water quality problems that are very difficult for a municipal water treatment plant to treat. You've got very challenging topography, the natural hazards of rockfall, debris, flow, mud, and ash. And by the way, avalanches and fires change water chemistry to the water treatment plant. And certainly in Silverton's case, lack of scale. If you're the Denver Water Department, you can afford to put in a reservoir on the west slope and do a trans-basin diversion to the Front Range. But those kind of projects aren't available to small towns like Silverton. Changing climate, which I'll talk about a little bit, drought and water rights. Well, why is water rights a big issue? Well, in the only call that's been registered in the Animas River was in 1996, and it was placed by the Animas Consolidated Ditch. At the time, the state engineer did not honor the call because they could not sweep the entire river. But there are 123 senior water right holders to the town of Silverton. That requires 258 CFS to be in the Animas River. To put that into perspective, the flow in the river today was 378 CFS. In 1977, the comparable flow was 185 CFS. The median flow over the last 50 years has been 673 CFS on this date. Compare that to where we are today, 378 CFS. That's a significant change. And if under drought conditions or changing climate, if a call was made in 1996, you're more apt to see calls occur in the future much more frequently, and the calls will come on much earlier in the year. And so people like Silverton have to have plans in place to augment their flows. One of the problems with the Boulder Creek supply has been avalanches. This was a picture in 2018 during the big snow year of 2018, 2019. The intake is kind of up in the mouth of this drainage, and it was covered under about 30 feet of snow at the time. And obviously they couldn't get access. The town of Silverton cannot send their personnel up to the intake during the winter months because of avalanche hazards. This is another view of the avalanche that occurred in 2018. And again, their Boulder Creek intake is up here at the mouth of this very steep drainage. This is the Boulder Creek intake. It's very common to use very old technology that's 40 to 50 years old. This is the water coming down on the upper right, the water coming down Boulder Creek. small forebay. It runs into a screen and then onto the town. You can see over here, lower left, this is the Shot Creek embankment that backs the water up. And under today's rules, you couldn't build these kind of structures. It's an on-channel structure and you just can't do that today. This is the Boulder Creek watershed. It's fairly unique. It's only 2.53 square miles. However, it's benefits from 47 inches of precipitation. The median elevation of their watershed is about 12,000 feet, a low elevation of 9,800 feet up to 13,500 feet. It experiences low flows in February of about 1 CFS, and they've experienced high flows as much as 180 CFS in July. And that's one of the challenges to a drainage like this is you have to design all the infrastructure, the intake to work at very low flows and very high flows. This shows the very highly variable flows from January through the end of the year. And unfortunately, we can't rely upon these mean flows anymore. It's changing so quickly. The hydrologic cycle is changing. We're seeing earlier runoffs and we're seeing much less flows late in the season and during the non-irrigation season. The other supply, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the Bear Creek supply, but it's very similar to the Boulder Creek supply, except the watershed is about twice as big. Few pictures. This was water coming down Bear Creek in 2018. This is probably July-ish. On the right-hand side, this is later in the season, and you can see that there's no water in Bear Creek. And this is part of the issue that precipitated a look at a new water supply. An aging infrastructure. This is the transmission line from Bear Creek to the water treatment plant, and it sits right on the bottom of Mineral Creek. And why that pipeline is still there is beyond me. It's subject to, that's the low point. It's subject to freezing in the wintertime. It's subject to filling up with sediment and debris. But that's a real issue as well. When the call happened in 1996, Silverton started looking at augmentation strategies to meet the call. And one of the water rights they actually filed on was the top 5 feet of Molus Reservoir. And at the time, it was felt like that was an invincible augmentation supply, that it would always be there. Well, this picture was taken in 2018 during the 416 fire. Silverton owns the top 5 feet of the reservoir, and the CWCB owns everything else. Well, there wasn't that 5 feet in the top of the reservoir, as you can see here. So that augmentation strategy will not work during a time of drought. So the recommended solution for Silverton is to drill alluvial wells. Rather than continue to rely upon run-of-the-river supplies or reservoirs. The idea of reservoirs are just very expensive. Rules of thumb are minimum of $20 million and 20 years of planning. And rather than rely upon run-of-the-river supplies, we recommended they start looking at domestic well supply. This happens to be the base of Kendall Mountain. You can see the ski lift there and the lodge. Within the yellow polygon, the town owns all of that. We think a lot of that area is influenced by a small drainage off of Kendall Mountain called Swansea Gulch, and that we can stay away from the Animas River and some of the water quality problems in the Animas River and the groundwater under direct influence issues. So we're embarking on a course to do some test drilling to determine water quality, water quantity standards, and to ensure that we can drill wells that aren't under the influence of surface water. That project will be kicked off here in the next month. And with that, I'm going to conclude and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Louis. We have time for just one question. Does anyone go ahead and speak up? Okay, with that, Louis, thank you so much for your presentation. Some really remarkable visuals there. If you don't mind to stop sharing your screen. Next, we'll hear from Jordan Dimmick from SGM Engineering. If you've been a member of our forum, Jordan's pretty familiar to you because we've heard from him multiple times throughout 2019 and 2020 as he helped to manage the projects with Plata County after the 416 fire, both the Emergency Watershed Protection Project and now the Watershed Restoration Program. I think we're calling it as it's multiple projects. Jordan, thank you so much. You can share your screen.
Excellent. Excellent. Can you hear me? Okay. I always forget you have to double click. Sorry. Okay. Can folks see my screen? Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you all. Yeah, as Amanda said, I just wanted to give an update of where we are in 2021 and progress we've made with the county's watershed restoration program. There we go. So overview, I'm just going to talk about what it is we've done, kind of the next steps specific to this program. And so folks may remember the Watershed Restoration Program. It's a Colorado Water Conservation Board CWCB grant. And really the focus is post fire recovery, but it's kind of more looking at the watershed. And so whereas La Plata County participated in the National Resources Conservation Service, the NRCS Emergency Watershed Protection Program, that really focused on protecting life and property. This watershed restoration program really can get to some of the source areas and focus on stabilizing the burn scar directly. And a lot of that happened on U.S. Forest Service land, so that's where we've been focusing. We just focused on 8 primary drainages. We looked at the Bear report after the 416 fire and looked at the drainages that were modeled to have the biggest amount of change in flow after the fire. And then certainly we've got a couple of years of observation and knew that there was some work that needed to be done to help the watershed restore and get back to pre-fire conditions. So we looked at Dyke Canyon, waterfall drainage, Trip Gulch, Buck Hollow, Mitchell Lakes, Bell Canyon, Hermosa Creek, and Bondurant and Dutch Creeks. So what have we done thus far? We've completed our conceptual engineering. We went out in the field last summer, identified problem areas where we could do some stabilization or re-veg was needed, maybe some check structures in channel to prevent sediment from coming down. And we developed a number of preliminary concepts, designs. We then ranked those projects. We had a number of stakeholder engagement opportunities. We had an online survey, got quite a few responses. And so based on what the stakeholders said were priorities, we went ahead and ranked all the projects 1 to 8 based on those rankings. We pulled all that together, came up with a cost estimate for those preliminary designs, and then we met with CWCB staff to review those projects and designs, make sure they fit within the program, did a little bit of revision. And then, as I said, a number of the projects are on U.S. Forest Service land. So we started communicating with James Semino and his staff on the specific projects and where we want to do it. And we've incorporated some of their thoughts in revising things and are moving forward. So kind of a quick overview on U.S. Forest Service lands. We've identified about 15 project areas over 5 drainages. The projects include channel stabilization and re-veg, check structures and grade control projects on some really incised drainages. There's some existing culverts that have filled in with debris. We'd like to clean those out, potentially increase the size and protect the head of the culvert on the intake side so that they don't fill up with debris in the future. And then looking at an early warning flood detection system. And then on private land, we've identified 7 project areas across 5 drainages and very similar projects, stabilizing the channel, looking at re-veg opportunities, both riparian and upland re-veg projects, culvert cleaning, inlet protection, early warning flood detection system. And then there's some public utilities that have infrastructure kind of in harm's way. And so we'd like to further protect those. And so next steps, we are currently coordinating with U.S. Forest Service staff, Lou and James, and looking at agreements that might work for the Forest Service and for La Plata County and getting towards some sort of agreement that would identify what projects we're doing and where. And then kind of at the same time, we're looking at the NEPA requirements for individual projects in these areas. And then we're taking our conceptual design and incorporating Forest Service comments and trying to get those to the final design for final review and trying to button this up as quickly as we can. And then the next piece that we're just really starting to roll out is the communicating with private landowners to discuss identified projects. So we just reached out to one last week, and then there'll be a number of calls we're making this week and next just to talk about the projects we think would be beneficial to the watershed and individual landowners and coordinating with them. So nothing is really firmly agreed upon yet, and there would be kind of the same process of agreements and completing the permit requirements and then going to final design. And then timeline, where there's a lot of things in flux and there's a lot of people we're coordinating with, so we're not exactly sure. We do think this spring La Plata County will advertise a request for qualifications for various contractors so we can gauge interest and kind of pre-qualify contractors who would be up for and capable of doing these projects. And then we'll have our pre-construction activities of bidding, finalizing permissions, the permitting, and then coordinating pre-construction activities. Ideally, we'd like to be in some sort of construction mode later spring, early summer. We kind of see 3 phases. There'll be a couple of Forest Service pieces once we get all the agreements and permitting in place, where we'd actually construct the projects. And then there's a number of revegetation projects that we want to partner with the Forest Service and support them. And so depending on timing, that may happen this spring or may happen in the fall, but there would be some re-veg project specific that would be kind of a second package. And then the third piece would be working with private landowners and getting those projects installed. So those are our steps. I know I kind of zipped through that quickly. I wanted to save a few minutes for questions. I know I went through that, but happy to open it up.
Thank you, Jordan. Sure, everybody, if you have a question, you can speak up, or if you want to just put it in the chat, that's great also. Any questions for Jordan? I'll ask a question. Jordan, do you intend, so you said you'd like construction to begin late spring. I'm going to assume you're trying to get most of it finished before monsoon season would start in late summer?
Definitely, that is the goal. Yeah.
Great. Thanks. I agree. Allison, SGM, has done a great job on this.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close it for questions then. Jordan, thank you so much. And the next presentation will be by our Outreach and Education Subcommittee, and Maddie Roberts and Marcel Getzenbeid are going to present on that. Maddie, would you like to share your screen?
Yeah, would you be able to allow me
Are
to
you not
share my screen?
Sorry.
Should be able to now. Thank you. All right, can everyone see my screen? Yeah, and Maddie, I wonder if we could maybe have Marcel kind of set the backdrop of the Park Forum subcommittee and the Animas, and then pass it off to you. Would that be okay? Feel free to keep your slides up, but Marcel. Yeah, absolutely. Marcel, would you like me to stop sharing my screen?
You can leave them up. Yeah, I didn't have anything to share screen wise, so that's perfect. But yeah, hey folks, again, I'm Marcel Gasdenbeit. I'm the chair of the kind of subcommittee that is working on the next version of our Animas, which is the document that Arc Forum created a couple years ago, answering questions that folks have about the Animas River. The update from us is that the development of that next version is still moving forward. We're expecting to have a new version ready by this summer. We'd originally hoped to have things ready to roll out this spring, but because the group's made up of volunteers with busy jobs outside of our work on the subcommittee, we've kind of pushed our timeline a little bit. So we're kind of being easy on ourselves and flexible with developing our Animas 2.0. But the plan is still to update the new version with any changes in water quality that have taken place over the last few years, updates from fish surveys, provide updates from various watershed groups and projects that are ongoing across the watershed. We're also planning on developing new content around climate change, around drought and snowpack, which this meeting has been really heavy on. We're also going to highlight some species that exist in the watershed, like the San Juan lineage cutthroat trout, like the American dipper, species that depend on the watershed. And then also summarize some of the great work coming off of the 416 burn scar and the recovery of Hermosa Creek in the Animas. And some of you probably saw this in the Arc Forum emails or elsewhere, but we're also excited to be working with Dr. Jared Beaton and his students at Fort Lewis College on an expanded survey, kind of trying to gather and gauge perceptions of Animas River issues from across the watershed. And I'll share a link to that survey in the chat down here. But it's super great. It's still open now. The deadline to complete that survey is April 16th. So if you haven't filled it out already, please do so if you have the time, or share it with your networks. And then our Animas is also going to have this great accompanying story map, which Maddie's going to get into here shortly, that's going to kind of display some of the information from the Our Animas document in a more compelling way and visually. And so thank you to Maddie for working on that. And I will toss it over to you.
Okay, well, thanks again. My name is Maddie Roberts, and I'm really excited to be here today. I'm a student at Fort Lewis College. I am an environmental studies and GIS certificate student, and I am graduating in May. And I've had the opportunity to be the GIS intern for Mountain Studies Institute and to create maps and the story map for the second edition of our Animas. This opportunity has been incredibly rewarding. I'm passionate about science communication and utilizing GIS and cartography to connect with the community. So I'm going to share with you the maps I've been working on, as they've been the main focus of my internship. And I'd like to note they are a work in progress, as I'll be continuing the final revisions over the next 2 weeks. This is the reference map I've created. It is meaningful because it creates a sense of place for the readers of our Animas. It will be the first map they see and creates a sense of place and overview of the Animas watershed. It communicates land ownership in and around the watershed, including tribal land, public, and private land. It is important to know the geographic setting for our Animas, and this provides the reader a sense of place in relation to the Animas River, the Animas River watershed, and land ownership. And as Marcel's mentioned, I've had the opportunity to collaborate with a social science research team at Fort Lewis.
They've created a survey asking individuals within local and broader communities about the relationship with the Animas. And from listening to the objectives of the research team, I've learned a goal of their survey is to get the most survey coverage as possible, to essentially reach out to as many demographics as possible. So I've made sure the survey included a question asking for a location of where the participant is from. And this was accomplished by asking the survey participant's zip code. So as the survey results are not quite in until the 16th, I don't quite have the data yet and will not for another few days. So I went ahead and created kind of made up data for the meantime so that I could create a workflow and idea of what this map will look like. And I'm looking forward to remaking this map with the actual data once the survey results are in. And the key takeaway and meaning behind this map is to get a sense of who is answering the guiding questions set forth by the committee. I've created a map of the groups and collaboratives that are active in the Animas River watershed. The goal of this map is to provide readers with additional resources and to just show how many groups are operating within the watershed. And then this map fits in the acknowledgements and support or sponsor section of the story map. And as you can see on the right side of the screen, in addition to the map, I've created links within the story map where you can click on a collaborative's name, which will send you to the organization's website, just to make it easier to get in touch. So the final map I've created is the wetlands within the Animas River watershed. I acquired data from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and they have categorized 4 different types of wetlands. As you can see, there is the wetlands of the entire watershed and then a zoomed in map of the wetlands near downtown Durango. And it shows the different types and descriptions of wetlands. So my goal for this map was to highlight the importance of wetlands and especially to show how small of a percentage of wetlands are actually in the watershed. And through analysis, I calculated that wetlands cover only 1% of the Animas watershed. And this is really important to communicate with the reader as it demonstrates why the community should care about wetlands. So I've created this skeleton and outline of the Our Animas story map. As you can see, this is the title page. I've gone with more of a title or water related theme and design throughout the story map. And I've created the chapters within the story map that are the same as the first edition, as well as the same guiding questions that are throughout the story map. And this will really provide continuity from the first edition to the second edition. And I've made the outline ready and designed all the main sections so that way it is seamless and efficient when it is handed over to the next person once the final content is ready to be added to the story map. All right, and this concludes my presentation, and thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much, Maddie. Fantastic job. I'm really looking forward to seeing the final product. And I know Marcel posted the link to the survey in the chat. So if everyone sees that link to the Survey Monkey, if you have not answered our community perceptions on the Animas River survey, it's open until tomorrow at, I believe, 4 p.m. So please give us your input. There we go. So, right. Marcel says there's his email if you have any questions. We're going to try to keep this going to get through a few more updates. I'm going to invite Jeremy May to talk about Riverwatch.
Thanks, Amanda. I don't have any slides to share, so this will be quick. I'm going to give you a little background on what Riverwatch is really quickly. And it's funny doing that with Barb here because she's the real guru. Hi, Barb. Riverwatch is a super unique program. It's a volunteer citizen science water quality monitoring program. And the data comprises a large amount of data used across the state to make decisions on Clean Water Act and watershed management by federal, state, and local governments. Volunteers are schools and students, as well as adult volunteers through watershed groups, and groups like Drought Unlimited, MSI. Yeah, so it's a very important program and amazing. So thanks, Barb, for that legacy. And in our area, because it started here, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, well, Barb has been coordinating volunteers in this area, and we're looking to transition that to what's done elsewhere around the state, which is in an area like ours where we have a lot of stations. We have about 25 stations monitored monthly, looking to take on that coordination independent of CPW. So Mountain Studies Institute is looking to form a coalition of stakeholders and folks who are interested to fund and coordination of that effort. So just wanted to update you all on that. We'll be kind of formalizing that process more, but if you're interested in helping us sustain Riverwatch in our area, the 25 stations in the Animas from Silverton down close to the New Mexico border and on Long Hollow as well, and Junction Creek and Hermosa, let me know. I'll put my email in the chat here, or if you have ideas on how this might be funded annually. The analysis includes metals, hardness, alkalinity, pH, dissolved oxygen, temperature, nutrients twice a year. And so it's great data. I think that was everything, short and sweet and to the point. So I'll just type my email in here and stay tuned for more. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. Yeah, we're also hoping to recognize the importance of the Riverwatch data in our upcoming Animas. So at this point, I'd like to open the floor. I can offer everyone 1 to 2 minutes to give their update from their organization. So if anybody is present, please speak up or put it in the chat or use your hand raise reaction to let me know that you'd like to do an update. Not everyone at once. Does Animas Watershed Partnership have any updates? Oh, John, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, so I'll go. I'm one of the members of the Citizens Advisory Group on this call for the Superfund site in Silverton. And the EPA came up with their 5-year strategic plan in March this year and presented it to the public and to the CAG. And in general, the members of the CAG who have that long experience of dealing with the watershed up there and restoration work have been, or were clearly dismayed. There's no real plan to increase water quality beyond what they're already doing by treating the Gold King. And there's a lot of opportunity for them to be doing that. And there seem to be just a lot more data gathering, and it's kind of mystifying as to what their real plan is. They've laid a lot of steps out that aren't addressing, things that we know need, that some real low hanging fruit still that could be addressed. And so the CAG is working on a letter to the EPA that we're going to share and get out, because they're just spending an awful lot of money up there, not getting much done. So I know there's several others here, and if you want to weigh in, I appreciate it.
I think that sums it up pretty well, John. Yeah, so the EPA shared their kind of task list for their plans for this year and their 5-year plan, both of which are kind of tackling a lot of the low-hanging fruit around consolidating mine waste, around managing stormwater, things that will lead to some small water quality improvements, but the CAG believes that there are higher priority items that we could get to better water quality faster. And so we're hoping to kind of give that feedback to the EPA. We've already done that verbally in our CAG meeting and are planning to articulate that in a letter to pass along to them, because with their 5-year plan, the way they have it laid out currently, it will have been 9 years of Superfund by 2025. And we're not sure that we're going to see any appreciable water quality improvements with their current plan. So the CAG is hopefully operating as it should and providing feedback, and we'll see if the EPA is responsive.
Thank you both for that update. That's great for us to be informed about, and thank you for your work on the CAG. We really appreciate it. Does anyone else want to share anything? We have 3 minutes left in our allotted time. Melissa, did I see your hand go up?
Yep, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
So this is just a joint update, kind of Animas Watershed Partnership and San Juan Watershed Group. We had a couple successful volunteer days down at the Ranchman's Trail Diversion Project in Flora Vista. And so that project has officially been completed. I'm guessing we'll end up doing more vegetation work over time to kind of check back in and do some monitoring and things like that. But some volunteers came down from this group, which was really awesome. And it's not going to be 100% on the Animas, mostly on the San Juan, but we will be doing another water quality bacteria study on the San Juan this summer. They're going to be looking for water quality sampling volunteers. And so if anybody is interested in participating in that further downstream in the watershed, I'll volunteer Alyssa. She's not here. I'll put her email address in the chat and you can contact her to get on our volunteer list. So thanks.
Thanks, Melissa. I'm glad you said that, because that reminds me, MSI will also be recruiting water quality volunteers for people to do water sampling up in the headwaters in the Silverton area as part of our new GOCO award. So what's really cool is that we're going to try to make sure our sampling methods are similar enough that Melissa's data and our data can be compared, and we'll really get this top and bottom of the watershed pairing, which is going to be really exciting. So yeah, keep in touch on that. I see a few things here in the chat. Eric, do you want to state that out loud?
Yeah, sure. So we're going through our work fair effort right now for FY22 planning with the Forest Service. And Columbine Pod 1, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the pod designations and the boundary delineations, but it's the lower Animas River, lower Hermosa area. So that is going to be the first landscape that we'll start collaborative work on through the RMRI effort.
Great, thank you for that. So now we're at 4:59, and with this last minute left, I want to thank everyone for being here today. And I want to announce again, I feel like we try to state this every meeting, but this forum is really meant to be a partnership, and that we see you all as equal stakeholders and part of this forum. So please never hesitate to give us your input on topics that you'd like to see discussed at a future meeting. If you'd like to do a presentation, please bring that forward. We definitely always are seeking your feedback at any time, really, not just during the meetings. And that being said, to truly show your membership in this group, we did send out a donation form, which is kind of your membership to this group, that we, Mandy sent it with the meeting announcement, and we will send it again following this meeting. So we really appreciate your financial support of this partnership as well. And you can have your organization recognized in the upcoming print materials for the new version of the Animas, as well as the story map that Maddie showed us. We'll put your organization on the map, and then we'll recognize you with your logo, and that can link to your website to drive traffic to your organization as well. Mandy, am I missing anything in the chat here that I should be saying out loud or recognizing?
There's a couple more updates. Job announcements that we'll be sure to include in the meeting notes. There's one at MSI. There's 2 summer technician jobs at San Juan Soil and Water Conservation District. So I'll be sure to include all of these in the notes and make sure you guys are aware of them. My goal is to get these meeting notes out much sooner but hoping to have this recording of this meeting on the website tomorrow, so you can share it with folks who weren't able to attend today. But yeah, like Amanda said, thank you so much to all our presenters and the partners for taking the time. Appreciate you.
Thanks. And it's 5:01. Great job, everyone. We stayed on time. That was a group effort. I appreciate you all. Thanks so much. We'll see you at
Thanks,
the
everybody.
next one.